Hello, good morning and willkommen from Munich. It's Monday, February the 16th, and welcome to a special Recess Week edition from us today. I've been packing up my bags in the Bayerischer Hof as the shiny black government cars leave the Munich Security Conference. My name is Anne McElvoy from Politico.
And I'm Sam Coates of Sky News, speaking from northern Finland, from Lapland, as it happens close to the Russian border. It's about 30 to 40 kilometres away, less than an hour's drive for certain if there was a road, but there isn't. And I'm not defecting, I'm only here on holiday. But wouldn't want to leave you, Anne, because there's so much I want to find out about your Munich trip, alongside not one, but two potential successors to Keir Starmer, John Healey and Yvette Cooper.
Well, what a tease. I was going to talk about John Healey, who is absolutely in his natural habitat here in Munich at this defence conference. But Yvette Cooper also made it to the top of the billing too, for dramatic reasons in international affairs to do with Russia, not far from you, Sam. We'll also be looking at how Keir Starmer sought to project himself in front of allies. And President Zelensky told us at Politico that he and a free Ukraine would outlive Putin's rule and the war. The evidence of the rare poison used to kill Alexei Navalny was revealed, and Iran signalled it could come close to a near-term deal over its nuclear capabilities. And Keir Starmer, our embattled Prime Minister, put closer ties with Europe at the centre of his pitch here in Germany.
So much foreign affairs that now really wouldn't be the time for Keir Starmer to lose a national security advisor. Yet that's exactly what The Guardian are reporting at the moment could happen at the end of the year. Jonathan Powell potentially eyeing an exit in the next few months. Now, Number 10 denied this, although we'll see if that denial holds, and also deny the other claim by The Guardian that he was offered Morgan McSweeney's job of Chief of Staff. You can see why they might do that because he's the only grown-up left, but you can also see why he'd turn it down, given he did it through the entire leadership of Tony Blair. Anyway, that story is, I think the Number 10 would say, in the realms of speculation, but it's one big thing around in recess, which is noticeably quieter than the blockbuster last couple of weeks, which will be a relief to Keir Starmer, who is back this morning from the Global Defence Conference, and this morning alongside one regional Labour leader who still gives him his backing for now. That's Sadiq Khan, who's been hinting at the weekend that he would, after all, go for a fourth term as London Mayor.
Fourth time lucky, gosh. Well, that event with Starmer and Khan this morning is about children and online safety. He's going to give his biggest hint yet of an imminent clampdown on that, and he'll say the government will take new legal powers so it can take immediate action when its consultation on children's well-being online finally concludes.
That means that the government will be able to act quickly on measures like setting a minimum age limit for social media and restricting features like infinite scrolling that are harmful, as well as reporting deaths of children that are suspected to be from social media to Ofcom automatically, and all of this without the need for primary legislation.
A few other bits and pieces this week while we're on recess, the most eye-catching being on Tuesday when at 11 a.m, according to Politico Sunday Crunch, Nigel Farage will finally unveil his shadow cabinet. Now, will Robert Jenrick get the job shadowing the Chancellor? He's clearly coveting that. Do former Tories get the plum jobs? And it will certainly be a moment that helps define the reform political project. And it's going to force some Farage choices he hasn't needed to make before.
It's going to be fascinating. I'm told it's the first batch of appointments, basically the great offices of state. Another thing to watch out for, there's also the ongoing blowback from that extraordinary story that the think tank Labour Together, when it was in opposition, Labour is in opposition, commissioned a report into what was behind some critical coverage. And all of that culminated in a consultant working for APCO, the consultancy, and the consultant's called Tom Harper, writing a detailed report on two Sunday Times journalists, Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York, and included information about their alleged personal, political and religious backgrounds, and sort of linking that to motivations about the story. All of this, an interesting affair, but all the more, well, awkward because Harper used to be at the Sunday Times and he's actually married to Sunday Times political editor Caroline Wheeler. I do wonder if all of that will come up in the excellent State of It political podcast that Caroline and Gabriel co-host and record every Tuesday.
Everything's connected at the moment, isn't it? And Tom Harper, well known to those of us who follow Ukraine, because he did a lot of work for Bankova, for the government in Kiev, and particularly for Andrei Yermak, who was ousted not long ago as chief of staff to one Volodymyr Zelensky. Very circular. Otherwise, it's the health module of the COVID inquiry, inflation stats, and Donald Trump's peace board, that controversial entity, meeting for the first time.
Do want to know in a moment from you, Anne, what the perceptions are of other countries towards the Starmer government from what they saw this weekend. But before you do, there's signs that you've got that Keir Starmer will return home, with the Mandelson affair remaining very much in the headlines.
Absolutely. Dan Bloom in Playbook is reporting that a possible police interview under caution with Peter Mandelson is due in the next fortnight or so.
That will be a really big moment. So, of course, reporting restrictions do kick in and doesn't get as much coverage as you might expect sometimes for those things. That's fascinating. Apparently, that's not the only thing he's heard.
No, it's not. He's reporting of an email exchange between Morgan McSweeney and Mandelson, where the ex-chief of staff asked about Mandelson's Epstein links. It's one of the docs that the Met is asking the government to hold back, Dan is reporting. Now, that could force Keir Starmer to sit for weeks or even months on a pretty key piece of evidence, unless he wants to defy the police, and one thinks his legal instincts would mean that he would not do that, and it means the whole thing will dangle over the PM and his government for some time to come. One of Playbook's spotters saw the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary Kat Little emerging from Scotland Yard on Friday. One government official lamented to Dan, there were people who thought we could get this all out in a week and it would be over and done with. Those people were wrong.
Right. Okay. That all hangs over Keir Starmer. It's interesting. We might have gone away, but the problems definitely haven't. My colleague Ali Fortescue has, in our absence, been doing a bit of a ring round. The pro-Keir view at the moment, sort of close allies to the Prime Minister, tell her that he is actually at his best when his back's against the wall. And his main line of defence to colleagues has been that he remains the best person to do the job and there's no obvious alternative. So having spent the weekend around him and other cabinet ministers, and how much does that hold water from what you saw in Munich?
Well, Keir Starmer spoke on Saturday on the main stage, albeit introduced slightly head-patted in her dear Keir kind of way by Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission president. He did give a substantial speech on how Europe in the age of Putin and a receding American commitment to NATO needed the UK. He pledged Britain would always be there for NATO countries in Europe in case of any potential attack. For me, it slightly posed the question of whether it might have been good to suggest that he'd like them to step up for Blighty too. But this was much more a charm offensive in which he was trying to shape Sam a kind of new British defence identity, pretty much off the back of the old stuff of NATO membership, a lot of shared history and our role in the Second World War in helping liberate Europe from another threat. Lots of metaphors, including a slightly odd one on Europe as a sleeping giant in defence, which confused matters, to be honest, because for the French, that's a quote they think of as being of Napoleon on China as a threat. And then it was used to refer to the US retaliation for the Pearl Harbor Japanese attack. So I sat with quite a lot of quite confused European correspondents. But either way, it was one of Keir's Europe, please take us seriously outings. What went down best was when he said, this is no longer Brexit Britain. A lot of the hall applauded that. Of course, it kind of means that they like it most when he says sorry.
Fascinating. It's a tricky time in EU relations. Clearly, Keir Starmer is trying to build up towards a closer relationship. At the same time, ministers like Peter Kyle have been fighting this initiative driven by the French, the Made in Europe initiative, which would see greater protectionism inside European supply chains to Britain's detriment. It's really a tool for fighting China and America. I hear that we're broadly winning the argument, or rather, the majority of countries in Europe are not looking to punish non-European countries in European supply chains, and that threat is starting to recede. But it's just a reminder that we do have to do a lot of heavy lifting outside the EU to continue to impress them, to sort of bear down on French instincts to sort of marginalise the British. So Keir Starmer leading that effort, but really I think a lot of it is about whether or not he has the political authority to do what he says he could do. And do you think that people were sizing up the people around Keir Starmer this week in Munich?
Oh, for sure. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, a lot of interest when he came to give a briefing. He gets good profile at these things, being out and about, Sam, when defence is obviously the main subject. You've got all the big companies here as well. They want access to him. And he puts a good spin. Well, I actually asked him this question, how had his week been, and why would anyone take Keir Starmer and his team that seriously when, as one German delegate said to me, like, how long has he got? When that's the first question, it's not exactly a great start. And John Healey, who can do this, he's got this part. He reels off all of these things that have happened in defence and security, multilateral things with lots of acronyms that were not there before Keir Starmer came to power. Now, in part, that's simply because of the times we've lived in since Starmer came to power, but fair dues, and Healey puts a good face on that. There's still some skepticism about how he's getting on with the big defence investment plan. It's not through the Treasury ringer yet. We've talked about it on this podcast since before Christmas. He dodged that a bit. He said that we'd very soon see progress there, but he didn't say which targets would be hit and when. And he did tell me also he'd been in the high north in Norway looking at Arctic security, a bit like you on your holidays in Finland, Sam. But he said it was better than being at PMQs, and it got a little bit of a sort of sickly laugh. And then he sort of bethought himself and hastened to tell me it was a joke, which he said rather emphatically in case anyone should think he was not being loyal. He's getting quite good at this chin-jutting, aquiline shtick, and I think there is a bit of interest in him as a potential transitional or emergency stand-in if Keir Starmer should go missing.
It's interesting. John Healey gets a very good write-up from all around Westminster, clearly from places like Munich. If the problem with Keir Starmer, though, is that he didn't have a very clear guiding politics, I'm not sure I know what John Healey's very clear guiding politics would be in its place. So if you ended up with him taking the mantle in a crisis, it would be this notion of somebody who is temporary, because he doesn't feel like he's somebody with a plan for Britain. And I wonder whether that ultimately could be the sort of holdback that you end up replacing with one technocrat with another, which is why I want to ask you, Anne, about another figure that I'm just hearing being talked about at the moment, and that's Yvette Cooper.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in very quickly on your framing of the Healey question. I might just, a slightly contrasting view, suggest that the exam question might be different in any dramatic fall of Keir Starmer, foreseeably some point maybe after May elections, or if he gets that far, etc., which is, how do you square this circle, which everyone's having difficulty with, including people here still shocked and dazed and confused, between the soft left of the party and the more trad right of the party, or those who would be seen as being able to be presented to the electorate that way. And so maybe it's a different kind of leadership, one that could span that very awkward bridge. He's seen as a very loyal party man, very solid, big on the international stage. So that would maybe be his calling card if indeed he wanted it. And it's really interesting that you also pick up on this renewed interest, Sam, in Yvette Cooper, partly because everyone in cabinet was getting the once over, people looking them up and down thinking, if Keir Starmer goes, and I think there's still very much among people I'm rubbing shoulders with here a sense that it's when and not if at some point he steps down or feels that he has to, well, the top of cabinet has to be looked at quite seriously. Yvette Cooper, I think, has grown into the role. She's been abroad a lot more, so it's not as new to her as perhaps it was when she'd spent most of her time in the UK and on issues like UK finance and the Home Office. Now, here she got to respond to the news of the Navalny poisoning evidence. All the major security services and important down analytics were involved in that to make a concerted push, really clearly coordinated, to foil Russia's attempts to say it was just manipulated by one country. And the point I would make about that is that she gets to be there. She gets to do those interviews on those big moments for the UK, particularly perhaps if Keir Starmer's a bit distracted. So that is going to raise her profile. It's an absolutely fair point. I think now when she goes around at these places, people know who she is. Say when she first came to the job, there was a bit of, who's your new foreign secretary? She also made a point kind of acknowledging the Boisiness, as she said in an interview, of Westminster. She's been there a long time. So she was kind of, she was someone who didn't used to talk really much about sort of that kind of issue, but she was also perhaps showing that slightly more, kind of humane side that she felt that she had experienced that.
Interesting. When you just look at the list of big government jobs that she's done in the Gordon Brown era as well as in the Keir Starmer era. She was Chief Secretary to the Treasury, she was Department for Work and Pensions, she was Home Office, she's Foreign Secretary. All of these things are qualifying for the biggest job of all. I know that there was utter fury in the way that she was moved out of the Home Office to the Foreign Office back last autumn, and because of that, some people around her, I think, still think there's just a little bit to prove. She has a formidable team, not least the renowned Damon McBride working for her. So there's quite a little operation going on there. One person said to me, you might just find that one day every other candidate has been eliminated and only Yvette Cooper is left standing, and that is how this is conducted.
This is your Hercule Poirot analysis. Oh, no, it's not. It's the other one, isn't it? It's your Sherlock Holmes analysis, Sam, where once you've eliminated everything that's not possible, you get to the only possible solution. She has a strong team. She's so steely and ambitious. So let's see.
Let's see. The one black mark that she gets from across the system is a need to be able to make decisions better and quicker. So can she tackle that? It won't be something that affects a leadership contest because it's said in private rather than something that colleagues were talking about. But it's not a absolutely clean rap sheet, but let's see. That's the kind of thing that can be explored at length in recess, which it is, which means that we are not back until next Monday for Politics at Sam and Anne's. We are having a break as well. Have a fabulous week, and we will see you in a week's time.
See you in a week's time. We're going to have a couple of days in Munich and then head home.